Hello, Answers Now family and friends. It is time for our weekly Parent Support University. Today we're going to be talking about structured play groups, which is going to have a lot of overlap with things that we've talked about so far. Reinforcement, social narratives, all kinds of stuff. Because what we're talking about is the toolkit, the ABA toolkit. So now we've got a lot of the tools out. You'll find that they all kind of lock together. And that's really what a BCBA does, a board certified behavior analyst, is they've got all these tools and it looks kind of like magic sometimes, but what they're doing is they're just using interventions to help your son and or daughter develop skills that make the world bigger for them. That's really the key, is how do we make the world big for these kids? Because a lot of the times, the fact that they can't communicate or struggle with communication, struggle with social skills, and have interfering behaviors makes the world small. And so we're working in the other direction. I am Adam Dreyfus. I'm the Chief Science Officer and co-founder of AnswersNow. What is AnswersNow? We are a mobile platform, but you can also access us on the web. I do encourage you can go to our website, getanswersnow.com, learn a lot more about us, sign up if you would like. You can go to your app store, Google Play Store or App Store, and just type in Answers Now, all one word. Just don't put a space between the answers and the now. And we should be the first or the second thing that comes up, a little purple butterfly. And just download the app for free. Check it out. What is it exactly that we do? Well, we connect you directly to a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst. The Centers for Disease Control are really clear on this, that applied behavior analysis, ABA, is the most effective treatment for individuals diagnosed with autism. Treatment's probably not the exact best word. Intervention package. Education would probably be better, because there's no pills, there's no needles. ABA is entirely teaching, is what it is. It's teaching new skills. People say, "Oh, well, I don't need new skills. What I would need my kid to do is less of this other behavior," and that's a great point, and that's frequently why we get phone calls. But the key point there is that you can't just swap. Well, that's not true. Let me say, you can swap out behaviors, but you can't just take a behavior and take it away. It generally doesn't work very well like that, as you have probably found out trying to get these behaviors to go away, whether they're just sort of socially challenging, right? Like kids who flap their arms or make noises or things like that. They're not hurting themselves, they're not hurting somebody else, but it kind of makes their world a little small, makes it difficult for them to make friends. A lot of the times the families can get a little bit embarrassed out in public, like whether you're in a restaurant or a church or something like that, and they go, "Can you get him or her to stop doing that?" And the truth is that they're doing it for a reason. And we talked about this several weeks ago with functional behavioral assessments. Like, how do you figure out what it is that that behavior is, what need it is meeting for the child? And then a really good BCBA, a really good educator, teacher, whoever, parent, swaps it out. You take a more socially appropriate behavior, something that kind of expands their world out a little bit, and you teach that. And then hopefully what happens is the other behavior kind of drops away. Drops away is not the exact right word, but it's pretty close. Today we'll be talking about structured play groups, which most families are pretty familiar with. If you get involved in any kind of interventions for your son or your daughter, it is not always what happens, though, when you get a lot of ABA services, because most ABA services are either in the home, where one person is coming in and working with your son or daughter in your house by themselves. Sometimes they'll bring in the brothers and the sisters to kind of help out. Depends on the skill set of the clinician. But there's usually not a whole lot of social opportunities, not a whole lot of structured play groups inside someone's home. Or you go to a clinic. And the clinics like to say, "Oh, we do all these kind of groups." But the problem is they're almost always groups of other children with disabilities. And that is not what a structured play group should be. A structured play group should have typically developing kids who have good social skills, right? They call them confederates, not in the sort of the negative connotation, but in the good one, like, hey, these are friends of yours that are going to come in and help out. Ideally, You're gonna, well, here, let me back up just a second. I'm gonna give you 4 tips today for structured play groups and how you can make them as effective as possible. So, some of it is a little bit of planning, some of it's just a little bit what happens when it's going on, but you're going to walk away from here with 4 tips. I do want to remind you that where we're getting these, this is not Adam just coming up with stuff. Although sometimes I get accused of that. Is this just you making stuff up? No, I don't make any of this stuff up. About 10 years ago, roughly 10 years ago, the National Professional Development Center, you can look it up, NPDC, National Professional Development Center, came together and basically hit pause on what is it that we know works for children and adults diagnosed with autism. Not what's the sort of the fad of the week or the newest kind of thing, but what do we know after 30 years of success? And so they pulled together a list. You will sometimes hear people talk about evidence-based. Well, these are all evidence-based practices. So this is a list of evidence-based practices, things we know that work. And on the website, they'll tell you what evidence, like how old the kids are. Sometimes the evidence is for middle schoolers. Sometimes the evidence is for kind of all age ranges. Sometimes it's just for little kids. But they've got it all on their National Professional Development Center. And what they did with this information, they ran some pilots around the country to sort of prove that these things that we already knew worked all over the place. And then they put together AFIRM modules, the AFIRM modules, and you can go sign up for free. It's a great resource. And so what we're doing with our professional Parent Support University is just going through each one of these evidence-based practices, explaining them a little bit, giving some tips and tricks, and hopefully connecting you as a caregiver a little bit more to this body of knowledge that's out there. Because that's really what AnswersNow is all about, is reducing your barrier of entry to all of this expert knowledge. It's crazy making for Jeff and I, who founded this company, that there's all this great knowledge out there, but only a few practitioners. So we connect you to a BCBA. There's only 35,000 or so, maybe 40,000 at this point, BCBAs on Earth, like the whole planet. There's some states that have more teachers than that. There's millions of teachers. So very small pool, but that's what AnswersNow does, is it connects you directly to some of them. We've got some great BCBAs on the platform. Definitely encourage you to go to Get Answers Now and check it out. You can see some of them. I will say that BCBAs really like this platform because it lets them connect to more people and do what they do. These are all people who just really love what it is they do. And it's but it's a lot of, so that's what we do. So we're going to talk about structured play groups right now. One of the first things I want to say about structured play groups is, to the degree that you can, find an activity that the child already likes. So taking a kid who is super into Mario Brothers to a Lego convention, because you've heard that lots of kids with autism like Legos, but your kid has never shown any affinity or desire to play with Legos. But you're like, oh, there's lots of kids with autism there. I'll be able to do a structured play group there. Recipe for disaster. That is not a good way to go. You definitely want to try to find something that your son or daughter already engages in. I would highly recommend getting them used to people interfering with their play a little bit, because a structured play group is going to be just that. You're interfering with their play to try to get them to learn new skills. That's one of the challenges of structured play groups, is, like, say it is Legos. You really like Legos, your kid's super into Legos, you're like, this is awesome. I heard Adam say, find something they like. I'm going to go to a Lego club and put them in the room and everything's going to be great. Probably not. Probably not. Why? Because I'm positive that your son or daughter likes playing with Legos in a very specific way, their way. And they are probably not very open to somebody coming along and playing with it in a different way. So you'll want to take the edge off that a little bit. Start with some parallel play, where you're just kind of playing next to them so they get used to somebody in their proximity playing with things. See if you can practice a couple of the things that you would want to see in a structured play group. Turn taking, having somebody else play with you, having somebody play a little differently than you'd like to. This is you would definitely want to do this in the comfort of your home and not in the middle of a auditorium full of kids playing Legos. So you want to practice. When you do kind of pull together the structured play group, you've got your kids lined up, you've got your kid, maybe one other. You want to keep the groups very small and have only like 1 or 2 goals that you're working on. The goal should not be like, hey, my kid who doesn't play is going to go to this group and learn how to play. There's about 40 things that you need to do really well to do play very well. Some of them are social skills, some of them are communication skills, some of them are behaviors. A lot of them are doing things that our kids generally don't do great. And certainly around their play stuff is let other people interfere. So you want to practice. You want to keep it short. So we're going to go through them. You definitely want to practice before you go. Keep it short. Don't plan to go there for 6 hours. Right? You know your kid better than anybody. So whatever time you think that they could do, cut that in half. So if you're like, I think they could do an hour, do half an hour. You want, if at all possible, to end on a positive note. We're having a good time. You're having a good time. All right, it's time to go. Let's do this. You don't want to wait for an upset or a meltdown. That is not the sort of the bookend that you want on that. So practice. Keep it short. Only work on one or two things. And then key. Have an escape plan. By that, I mean, get ready to pull the plug and walk out if it starts to go south. You don't want to have a bad experience. You don't want to end on a really sour note. You don't want to force them kind of through this. And I'm one of those like, hey, you got to push these kids. You got to push them through their, uncomfortability. But you don't want to do that in the first time, the first few times. You definitely want to kind of build up their resilience a little bit to where you feel like you can kind of push them. So have an escape plan. It's crucial. And by that, like frequently, say you're a family of 5, right? And you've got Adam, who's on the spectrum, who's like 8 years old, and you take him to the Lego place. And what you definitely want to make sure that you do, you don't want to just kind of hijack the whole day for the whole family. So somebody's assigned, mom or dad or grandma or somebody is like, hey, if this goes south, you go with the kid, and the rest of us kind of get to keep doing it. But just having a plan, it'll reduce your anxiety. It'll reduce their anxiety because you'll be less anxious, and it will greatly increase the chances that you'll have some success. So what are our 4 things? You want to practice. Checking my notes over here. Have 1 or 2 goals, nothing too crazy. You want to keep it short and have an exit plan. And there you hopefully will have a successful structured playgroup. So I definitely encourage you to check it out at the AFIRM modules, AFIRM modules, structured playgroups. It takes you about probably an hour and a half to 2 hours to get through the module, and it will show you exactly how to do it. It's paint by numbers. It's how to set it up, if you want to take data and kind of go that route, it shows you how to do that. I highly encourage you to check out the National Professional Development Center. They've got all kinds of great resources. They have a wonderful COVID resource for parents. It's got all kinds of visuals, and it's fantastic. We share it on our site, but it is theirs. We don't like to take credit where someone else has done the work. I want to thank you for listening to us again for our Parent Support University Structured Playgroups. I am Adam Dreyfus. I am the Chief Science Officer and co-founder for AnswersNow. You can find out more about us at getanswersnow.com. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Feel free to check us out. Feel free to contact us. And hopefully you and yours are staying safe.